Good evening, everyone. We left off on page 25. Chicago Social Services, this is Director Melissa Chang, the director answered on the other line. Finally, Kerry thought. This is Lieutenant Kerry O'Malley with the Chicago CSI. I've been waiting for 15 minutes. I'm sorry, Lieutenant. We're very busy, and you're busy. You probably are so busy you didn't realize that Amber Wilkes never went to a temporary home last night, and that Kyle Warren never arrived at the station this morning. Excuse me? Who are Amber Wilkes and Kyle Warren? Unbelievable, Kerry thought. As I stated to the person who redirected my call, Amber Wilkes and Kyle Warren are two children under police protection. I gave you the case number. This morning I found Amber sleeping under a bench in my crime lab, and I suspect that Kyle was never picked up by one of your agents, but was kidnapped by someone posing as an agent. Chang gasped. Amber Wilkes and Kyle Warren, she said, tapping the names into her database in front of her. She shook her head. I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but the names were never entered into the database. No one was notified that they needed temporary housing. I watched my CSI enter their names into your database yesterday evening. Are you telling me they aren't even on record? That's correct, Lieutenant. Kerry sighed. This was worse than she thought. Whoever was leading this had resources, and had an agent inside. The crime lab's security cameras were completely wiped clean. This was no run-of-the-mill crime boss. I may need your assistance later. For now, stand by. I'll do that, Lieutenant. Goodbye. Kerry flipped the phone closed, and the woman's holographic image disappeared. She rubbed her eyes with her thumb and index finger. She turned to Justin. We need to figure out who has Kyle, Justin said. Obviously not social services, from what I heard. Kerry shook her head. Okay, we have to move here, and move fast. If Kyle was taken last night around 21:30, statistically he has another 4 hours before his chances of survival are halved. She saw Sarah walk out of the witness room with both her statement and Amber's statement. Miss Lee, this is what you both saw? Kerry asked, taking the two writing pads. Yes, ma'am, Sarah said. She looked nervous, Kerry noted. She purposely relaxed her own expression and said, Sarah, this is not your fault. They had proper identification. It was scanned into the computer and verified. You did your job. Sarah nodded. I know, she said quietly. Kerry made eye contact with her, then dropped her eyes on the report. She nodded when she read them. You both agree on physical description. Lucky for us, Amber has a photographic memory. Banning, run a search for Mr. Greenville in social services, and don't be surprised when you find out he has a perfect record. We just want to know where he's been in the last 72 hours. And I want to see satellite and drone surveillance outside the crime lab for last night. Understood? She handed him the witness reports. Yes, ma'am, Greg said, and turned to walk away. I want those results 10 minutes ago, Banning, Kerry said as he left the group. She turned to Nikki. Nikki, I want you to put out an Amber Alert for Kyle. Make sure the entire country knows, and the airlines as well, just in case Mr. Greenville decided to take a trip to the airport. Nikki nodded and jogged to her desk to complete the task. Justin, how's the downloading going on that USB drive? We should be done within the hour, Justin said. They had started last night and left it running under police guard. It was an old drive and not compatible with any of their hardware, so it took a while to locate a compatible reader. Kerry nodded and said, Justin, Sarah, the two of you take a patrol car and start scouting out the city, especially Kyle's house. It hasn't been processed yet, and that makes it a target for people who try and change the evidence. We're on it, Justin said, and they left. Kerry ran a hand through her short red hair, fluffed it slightly as she scratched her head, and turned toward the witness rooms, where no one was paying any attention to Amber. She could use some more information from the child, and then she was going to review those files. Greenville had to have left in some kind of vehicle last night. He didn't beam out, she thought to herself. She would collect whatever evidence she could, and use Amber to help. She nodded to the female guard outside and walked in. Amber sat with a crayon, coloring. Kerry smiled. Hey there, what are you coloring? Just drawing something, Amber said with a shrug. She didn't look at all happy. What's wrong, honey? Kerry asked her, sitting in the opposite seat. I miss Kyle. He was supposed to be here by now. Sarah said. She said we'd only be apart last night, and then he's not here. Kerry nodded. I know, Amber. You deserve to know what's going on, she said slowly. Kyle was her best friend. In order for Amber to help, Kerry needed her to have at least some of the facts. The man that left with Kyle last night hasn't returned him yet, and we're trying to find that man. If you can help me retrace exactly where he went with Kyle last night, we can find him faster. Amber's eyes grew fearful, and then she nodded dutifully. "I'll help, yeah," she said eagerly. "Let's go." She jumped out of the chair and walked quickly toward the door. Kerry followed right behind her, and the female guard kept some distance but stayed within ear and eyesight for liability purposes. They walked down the hallway, and Kerry asked, "Where exactly were you and Sarah and Kyle last night, before Mr. Greenville came?" "Over here," Amber said, and started walking toward the waiting area. She plopped herself down on a seat. "Sarah sat here," she said, indicating the seat to her right. "Kyle sat here," she continued, indicating the seat to her left. "And Mr. Greenville came in right where you're standing. Then he said, 'I'm from social services, and I've got a nice place for Kyle to stay.'" "Right," Kerry said kindly, but not wanting to hear it again. "Can you show me where he went? Which direction?" Amber nodded and got up. Then she turned left and walked down a hallway. "I heard footsteps, but Sarah and I talked. I couldn't see where they went after," she said. Kerry walked alongside her. "That's okay. You gave us a direction, and that's important," she said with a smile. She put her hand on Amber's shoulder, and this time Amber didn't flinch. She tensed slightly, but then relaxed, and Kerry kept her hand there. They walked slowly, Kerry looking mainly at the floor for any evidence, and mentally calculating which way would be the most efficient to take a child to a car outside and drive away. To break the silence after a few moments, Amber asked her, "Kerry?" "Mm-hmm," Kerry answered, squatting to look at what she thought might be a rubber lizard near a stairwell. Unfortunately, it was a piece of bubble gum. "Why do you talk funny?" Kerry smiled at that and looked at Amber. "Do I talk funny? I hadn't noticed." Amber looked confused and shrugged. "You don't talk like me. Do I sound funny to you?" That was very intuitive of her, Kerry thought. "Yes, you actually do," she said, "but I'm used to it, since most people I talk to speak like you do." She stood up and started descending the stairs. Amber was right behind her. "I never met anyone who talks like you before." "I've met quite a few people who talk like me, but probably quite a few more who talk like you," Kerry said with a smile. She chuckled and decided to stop confusing the poor child. "I'm from a different country originally, and over in that other country, everyone talks funny, like I do." Amber nodded in understanding. "I know all the continents: North America, South America, Asia, Africa, Antarctica, Europe, and Australia." "That's very good. Can you guess which continent I was born on?" While she spoke, she looked around the stairwell, but found no evidence of a struggle and no evidence that Kyle had ever been here. When she got to the bottom, she noticed a scuff mark. It was made by a tennis shoe, and Kerry couldn't use it for evidence. Anyone's tennis shoes could make scuff marks. She opened the door for Amber. Amber went through and guessed, "Europe?" "That's right. Do you know any countries in Europe?" Amber shook her head. "No, well, England, and Spain, and Germany." Kerry smiled. "Ever heard of a place called Ireland?" Amber shook her head once more. "Nope." "Is that where you were born?" "Yes, it was. It's where my husband was born, too. We came here to America together." She looked around on the ground and on the walls, and still saw no sign of a struggle. Greenville had to have convinced Kyle that he wasn't going to harm him. "Why do you leave Ireland? Didn't you like it there? I've never left Chicago." "You ought to take a trip sometime," Kerry said to her with a smile, "when you're all grown up and you can do what you'd like to do." "I want to. I want to see Antarctica and all the other continents." "Why'd you leave Ireland?" Amber repeated. "Well, Connor's my husband. We decided that we would like it in America. We both wanted the opportunity to work here. There weren't as many jobs there, and they have some different laws than we do that would make what Connor does a little harder." "Why's the opportunity better here?" Amber asked, using the exact word Kerry had. She knew what opportunity meant, but hadn't incorporated it into her vocabulary until now. "You know about choices, right?" Kerry asked her as she took one last look at the hallway they were standing in, and then decided to go outside to look for tire tracks that were suspicious. "Yeah, I take them in school." "Well, grown-ups take them too, and since my job is catching the bad guys," she said, using terms Amber could understand, "it makes my job easier if I know what the bad guys were thinking before they did a bad thing. And the choices in Ireland aren't as prevalent as they are here. But my husband Connor is an author, and the only place he can publish whatever he likes is America. So moving here made my job and his job easier." "Oh," Amber said. "What about Mr. Greenville? Can't we look at his choices and find out if he was going to try and not give Kyle back?" "My friend Greg is doing that right now," Kerry said to her with a smile. This kid had the mind to be a CSI when she was older. "That's good," Amber said with a nod as they exited the building. Kerry started looking around on the road near the sidewalk, hoping Mr. Greenville had pulled away and left tire tracks so that they could find a wheelbase and tire material. Unfortunately, she found nothing. Amber interrupted her thoughts when she said, "Do you and Connor have any kids?" "Yes, we do," Kerry said, leading Amber back inside and deciding to check the back parking lot in case Greenville had used that. "What are their names, and how old are they?" Amber asked her. "Patrick is the oldest. He's 8, and Aiden is 6, Kerry told her with a smile. "Aiden is almost Kyle's age," Amber noted. "Yes," Kerry said, her smile growing a bit sadder. "Yes, he is." Amber was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Aiden's a funny name. I've never heard of that before." "It's Irish, like Kerry," said. She nodded to a police officer as they passed through the building. "Do you know how to spell Kerry?" "Kearie?" Amber asked. "Nope, it's spelled Kerry," she responded, and Aiden spelled Aedan. She opened the door for Amber to walk out, thinking how helpful it would have been if they had gotten Greenville's fingerprints on the door. Alas, too many people had been in and out by now, and fingerprints wouldn't be recoverable. "That's a weird way to spell something. It's not how it sounds," Amber said. She didn't at all sound rude, but rather curious. "What were you doing out there?" "I'm looking for traces that Mr. Greenville might have left. Tire tracks, leaking fluid on the ground, anything he might have dropped. Kyle's rubber lizard, those types of things." "I haven't seen anything like that, but I'll tell you if I do," she said dutifully. Kerry nodded. "I appreciate that, Amber. Thank you very much. Two sets of eyes are better than one." Amber nodded in agreement and started looking around as they walked. Kerry smiled as she saw the young child attempting to help. She looked around herself, but still couldn't find anything. She frowned. "All right, Amber, let's go back upstairs." Amber followed her, looking discouraged. Kerry put her arm around the girl's shoulders and said, "Don't worry, we'll get him back." "What if we don't?" Kerry didn't have a response for that. They were losing precious time every second. Amber wasn't a child that accepted silence as an answer. She repeated, "What if Mr. Greenville doesn't bring him back?" "I don't know, Amber," Kerry said, stopping at the foot of the stairs. "But I'll be here the whole time no matter what happens, okay?" Amber nodded reluctantly. "Okay. We'll read more tomorrow."